Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be looking into the recent earnings announcement that came out for the third quarter 2022 results for Exxon Mobil. And this stock has been absolutely dominating the overall market over the last year. We can see it's up a whopping 77% in the same year that the S&P 500 is down 14%. And then over the 5-year chart, it's up 36% when the S&P 500 is up about 50 to 60%. So we can see over the 5-year chart, ExxonMobil has not been outperforming the market, but this year has definitely been ExxonMobil's year, as well as a lot of other energy stocks that are trading in the stock market right now. And so in this video, I'm just going to look into some of the recent news that's come out surrounding ExxonMobil's company and the future growth for their company. And then I'm going to look into their financial statements to see the results for ExxonMobil's third quarter. And then I'm going to figure out the intrinsic value per share for the company so we can know if this is a good buying price to buy into the company from a value investing perspective. So thanks in advance for leaving a like on this video. It really helps this video grow a lot and get seen by more people on YouTube. So thanks for that, and let's get right into it. So we can see from this article that I found right here that they're pointing out that in the upcoming future, there are going to be sanctions placed on Russia that are going to change the oil market. And we can actually see right here that they talk about how the sanctions are probably going to contribute to helping ExxonMobil maintain these high price levels that they're currently selling their oil at, which is obviously resulting in the massive growth in their business over the last year, mainly because the sanctions on Russia are going to lead to supply chain disruptions, and that's obviously going to distort the amount of supply that's available in the market. And with increasing demand for this oil, that's going to raise the price of the oil. And so ExxonMobil is going to be able to benefit from the increased production and generating record profits at Russia's expense. And so right here we can see in the income statement for their third quarter for 2022, they're comparing their year-over-year results for the third quarter of 2021 to the third quarter of 2022. And year over year, their total revenues are up from $73.7 billion to $112 billion. So that's obviously a massive increase year over year. And if we scroll down here, we can see that their net income has actually increased even more so, from about $6 billion to about $19 billion. So a lot of growth for ExxonMobil. That's more than a 100% increase for their net earnings. So that's pretty impressive. And we can see that for their earnings per share, their earnings per share is up from about $1.57 per share to $4.68 per share. So definitely a ton of growth for ExxonMobil, which is obviously what's contributed to this massive increase in the stock price over the last year now. And so if I go to page 5 here, we can see their balance sheet. They're comparing their balance sheet for September 30th, 2022 to December 31st, 2021. And during that time period, their total assets have increased from $338 million to $338 billion to $370 billion. So a lot of total assets they're sitting on their balance sheet. And the majority of their business is financed by equity as opposed to liabilities. They have about $193 billion worth of total equity and $187 billion worth of total liabilities. And then lastly, right here for their cash flow statement, we can see they're comparing the results for the first 3 quarters of 2022 to the first 3 quarters of 2021. And during that time period, their net cash provided by operating activities has increased from about $31 billion to $59 billion. And of this $59 billion, about $24.4 billion worth of that came in the third quarter of 2022. And so year over year for their operating cash flow for the third quarter, it's increased from about $12 billion for the third quarter of 2021 to about $24 billion for the third quarter of 2022. So an increase of about 100%. And if we go to their financing activities, we can see that they point out how much they've paid out in dividends as well as how much common stock they've acquired. And we can see during the first 3 quarters of 2022, ExxonMobil has returned about $11.1 billion worth of cash back to shareholders in the way of dividends, and about $10.4 billion worth of cash in the way of common stock repurchases. And obviously, if they were purchasing common stock, that's reducing the amount of shares outstanding in their company, and their market capitalization is increasing because of this massive amount of earnings growth they've experienced over the last year. that's obviously resulting in this massive increase in their share price because there are less shares on the market, and so each share trades for a higher price. And of these first 3-quarter results for their dividends and their common stock, about $3.7 billion worth of dividends were paid out in the third quarter. And then of their common stock, about $4.5 billion of that was repurchased in the third quarter. So definitely a ton of value returned to shareholders. We can see how much of an increase that is year over year. Right here, only about $1 million. And then over here, about $10.4 billion worth of common stock acquired. And so now I want to look at this discounted cash flow model to figure out what the intrinsic value per share of ExxonMobil could be. We can see that from Yahoo Finance. They're estimating that the growth rate for ExxonMobil's company for the next 5 years is going to be about 25% year over year. So I was conservative and I cut that value just about in half to about 12% for the next 5 years after that. They had about $36 billion worth of free cash flow sitting on their balance, or not on their balance sheet, but on their cash flow statement for 2021. And then they had about $15 billion worth of debt after subtracting their total cash position on their balance sheet. And they have about 4 billion shares outstanding. And so with these metrics in mind, we can see that their intrinsic value per share is estimated to be about $270 per share with a 50% margin of safety of $135 per share. And so compared to their current share price, that means that ExxonMobil, despite the fact that their stock price is up 77% over the last year, according to these growth rates, as well as some of the metrics that are sitting on their financial statements right now, we can see they're trading still below a 50% margin of safety relative to their intrinsic value per share. So they're still presenting one of the strongest buying opportunities in the market, even though their stock price has risen 77% over the last year. So that's pretty interesting to see for any company. And so we can see right here on the right-hand side, I've compared them to some of the competitors in their industry, ConocoPhillips, Devon Energy, Occidental Petroleum, and Chevron. And we can see that in comparison to the other oil companies or energy companies trading on the market, that ExxonMobil is actually not doing that great in terms of gaining a competitive advantage from a financial ratio perspective. They have the 4th place spot for gross profit margin behind Devon Energy, ConocoPhillips, and Occidental Petroleum. And they have the worst net profit margin out of the 5 companies. And they also have about a middling return on assets relative to the rest of the industry here. And so we can see from a financial ratio perspective, it looks like ExxonMobil might not present the best buying opportunity. From that perspective, you probably want to look at a company like Devon Energy, which has the highest gross profit margin, the highest net profit margin, and the highest return on assets. And I'm probably going to make a video about each of these companies in the future since they all recently reported earnings or are going to report earnings. And so a lot of these companies are trading at pretty interesting buying opportunities right now. So it's definitely interesting to analyze this industry at the moment. Yet, even though they're not comparing or not really trading at a good buying opportunity from a competitor analysis perspective, we can see that from an intrinsic value analysis perspective, they are trading below a 50% margin of safety if they grow at these projected growth rates by Yahoo Finance for the next decade or so. On top of that, their stock price is up 77%. And we saw from their financial statements that they've reported essentially more than 100% growth on their net income year over year. So we'll see if they're able to actually maintain that growth moving forward. Obviously, as this article pointed out, the sanctions that are going to be placed on Russia that are going to take effect on December 5th are probably going to help ExxonMobil maintain those higher price levels and continue to earn record profits for their company. But only time will tell. We'll see where this company goes from here. But I'm definitely interested to know what everyone watching this video thinks about ExxonMobil. Is it a good buying opportunity right now? And do you own any shares of ExxonMobil? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'd love to talk about it. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see everyone in the next one.